Today, we are going to talk about something rather difficult. Someone you trusted deeply, and I mean proper, deeply, has betrayed you, betrayed that trust you had in that person. Maybe, maybe it was infidelity, maybe it was a secret kept for many, many years, maybe it was a promise broken broken so fundamentally that the ground beneath your relationship with that person shifted. And now everyone around you is telling you the same thing. Give it time. Time heals everything. But here's what perhaps no one is telling you: time doesn't heal betrayal, time just makes the wound older. Let me repeat that. Time doesn't necessarily heal betrayal, but simply makes the wound older. Trust isn't built by waiting, it's rebuilt through specific, consistent, and intentional actions from both people. And if those actions aren't happening, then no amount of time will close the gap. And here's the other absolutely brutal truth: even when trust is rebuilt, it won't be the same. It won't be the same trust you had with that person before your trust was broken. It will be different, sometimes deeper, sometimes more fragile, but certainly never identical. Hi, I'm Rahul Nair from the Huddle Institute of Psychology, Philosophy, and Spirituality, and welcome to episode 7 of season 3. Today we are going to going into the hardest territory perhaps of conflict resolution, and that is what happens after betrayal. What happens after betrayal and what it actually takes for us to rebuild. So, let's begin by setting up the problem. Let's be clear about what we mean by betrayal. Now, betrayal isn't just infidelity, although that's probably the most commonly discussed form of betrayal. Betrayal is absolutely any fundamental breach of trust within a relationship, a violation of an agreement, spoken or unspoken, written or unwritten, about how you treat each other in a relationship. It could be a partner who lied to you about finances for years, a friend who shared something that was deeply private, a colleague who took credit for your work and then decided to cover it up, a parent who broke a promise so significant it reshaped your understanding, your very understanding of safety. What all forms of betrayal share or have in common is this: they rupture the foundation the relationship was built on in the first place. They rupture the very foundation on which the relationship was initially built upon. The implicit contract. The implicit contract that I can trust you with my vulnerability. That implicit contract has been broken. And once that rupture happens, everything actually changes. Not just the relationship, obviously, the betrayed person's entire relationship with trust itself changes. And not just your relationship with that person. Your understanding, your relationship with trust itself fundamentally shifts. Here's why this matters from a systems perspective. Betrayal doesn't just damage one interaction or one conversation, it destabilizes the entire relational system. The rules, the assumptions, the shared understanding that held the system together, all, all of it suddenly falls under question. All of it is questionable. Can I trust anything they have told me? Were there other lies? Is anything in this relationship what I thought it was? These are one of many questions that may pop into your mind. These questions don't stay contained. They're not boxed somewhere neatly. They flood into every part of the relational system. And until they're addressed genuinely, not just by word of mouth, not just verbally, but genuinely, until it is addressed, the system cannot move forward. So, in this episode, we are going to look at what betrayal does psychologically and systemically, what genuine repair actually requires from both parties, and how to assess whether rebuilding is even possible or whether the healthiest path is to actually walk away. So, let's begin by understanding what happens from a psychological point of view when trust is betrayed. Betrayal is a form of trauma, actually, not always in the dramatic headline grabbing way or headline grabbing sense, but psychologically it shares key features with traumatic experience. Now, let me explain. When someone you trusted deeply violates that trust, your brain's threat detection system activates in a profound way. Your amygdala fires, your nervous system floods with stress hormones, and your brain begins doing something it does in response to any major threat. And that is basically that it tries to make sense of what happened. But here's the problem: betrayal by someone you trust is inherently paradoxical. Why? The person who was supposed to be your safe haven became the source of harm. Your brain can't process both truths simultaneously at the same time. This person loves me and this person hurt me deeply. So it kind of fragments. Your system kind of fragments. This fragmentation, this fragmentation shows up as the following. Number one, intrusive thoughts. So replaying what happened, imagining scenarios, unable to stop thinking about it. Hypervigilance. Number two, scanning for signs of further betrayal, interpreting neutral behaviors as threats. Another way it shows up is through emotional volatility, swinging between anger, grief, numbness, and desperate need for reassurance. And finally, it also shows up as loss of trust in self. How did I not see this coming? You ask yourself. What else am I missing? You ask yourself. This isn't weakness or being too sensitive. It's a neurological response. It's a neurological response to a genuine rupture in your sense of safety. Now, let's talk about something uh, more deeply: the distinction between remorse and regret. One of the most important distinctions in the repair process is between remorse and regret. Regret is about the apologizer. I'm sorry I got caught. I'm sorry this is causing problems. I wish things could go back to how they were. That's regret. Remorse is about the other person. I understand what I did caused you real harm. I see the pain I've caused. I take full responsibility for that, and I'm committed to understanding its full impact. That is remorse. Regret is self focused. Remorse, on the other hand, is other focused. That's the critical distinction. And here's the brutal truth: most betrayers initially express regret, not remorse. Not remorse. They're sorry about the consequences, the conflict, the tension, the threat to the relationship, all of that. They want the pain to stop. But the betrayed person doesn't need the pain to stop. They need to feel that the betrayer genuinely understands what they've done and why it was so harmful. That's what they want. They need evidence of remorse, not just relief, if you know what I'm saying. Moving from regret to genuine remorse is one of the most important shifts in the repair process, and it takes time, often much more time than either person expects. Now, let's look at the betrayed person's psychological journey. The person who was betrayed goes through a complex psychological process that doesn't follow a neat timeline. Phase 1 is about shock and disbelief. The initial rupture, the world has shifted and everything just feels unstable. Phase 2 is about anger and grief. The full weight of what happened lands. Grief for the, the, the trust that was lost, anger at the person who actually took it. Phase 3 is about hypervigilance. You start monitoring, questioning, needing constant reassurance. This isn't controlling behavior, it's the nervous system trying to assess whether it's actually safe or not. Phase 4 is about gradual, tentative re engagement. If conditions are right, if the betrayer is doing genuine repair, the betrayed person begins slowly to allow trust back into their lives. Not all of it at once, but in small, small increments. And phase 5 is about integration. The betrayal becomes part of the relationship's story, its narrative. Not the whole narrative, not the whole story. Trust exists again, but it's not the same trust. It's different. It's been tested and rebuilt. Not everyone reaches phase 5, and not every relationship should even try to. So that was the psychological journey of a betrayed person, the betrayed person's psychological journey. Now let's look at betrayal and repair through a systems thinking lens, as we always have been doing in this season with every topic. Betrayal as a system rupture. Before the betrayal, the relationship system had a structure: shared assumptions, mutual trust, agreed upon boundaries. These formed what we can call the architecture of the system. Betrayal doesn't just damage one part of that structure. No, it destabilizes the entire foundation. If the trust was false, if there were lies or secrets woven into the relationship, then the system was operating on inaccurate information all along. This is why betrayal feels so disorienting. It's not just that one thing happened, It's that the system you thought, it's that the system you thought you were in wasn't the system you were actually in. Repair then isn't about fixing one broken piece of the puzzle. That's not what repair is really about. It's about rebuilding the system's foundation, creating a new structure that can hold both people's needs, and that's based on accurate information this time around. That's what repair needs to be. Here's a systems insight that most people actually miss, and that is that rebuilding trust is not the betrayed person's job alone, and it's not the betrayer's job alone. It's interdependent. It's interdependent. The betrayer's work are the following: taking full unconditional responsibility, providing complete transparency, demonstrating genuine remorse, not only regret, making consistent behavioral changes, being patient with the other person's healing timeline. That's the betrayer's work. Now, the betrayed's work. The betrayed person also has some work to do. One, allowing themselves to grieve and feel angry without indefinite punishment. Number two, communicating what they need to feel safe. Gradually, consciously choosing to allow trust back into their lives. And recognizing when hypervigilance has moved beyond protection and into control. That's the betrayed person's work. Neither person can do this alone, obviously. If the betrayer does all the work, but the betrayed person never allows trust back in, the system will stay stuck forever. If the betrayed person tries to forgive, but the betrayer doesn't change their behavior, the system collapses entirely. Both must move, both have roles to play, both must move at different paces in different ways, but surely both must move. One of the most one of the most common dynamics after betrayal is something called surveillance. The betrayed person monitors the betrayer's phone, checks their location, questions where they've been. This is understandable. The nervous system is trying to protect itself from any further harm. But surveillance is not the same as transparency. And the distinction matters. The distinction matters enormously from a system's perspective. Transparency is the betrayer voluntarily offering information. That's what transparency is. I want you to know I'm having lunch with so and so today. She's a colleague. Here's what we discussed: it's proactive, it builds trust by demonstrating openness. Surveillance is the betrayed person extracting information by force, checking phones, demanding passwords, interrogating. It might provide temporary reassurance, but it doesn't rebuild any trust. It maintains a system of control and anxiety. The leverage point, the leverage point here is moving from surveillance to transparency. This requires the betrayer to proactively and be open, and the betrayed person to gradually trust that openness rather than needing to verify it all the time. So the leverage point is moving from surveillance to transparency, and this actually requires the betrayer to be proactively open and the betrayed person to gradually trust that openness without having the need to constantly verify. Now, not every betrayal leads to repair. That too is a truth that we need to come to terms with. Not every betrayal leads to repair. Sometimes outcome, the healthiest system outcome is dissolution. Signs that repair might be possible. Here they are. One, the betrayer takes genuine, unconditional responsibility. The betrayer demonstrate he demonstrates or she demonstrates willingness to change, not just talk about it. Thirdly, both people are willing to do the hard work. And finally, there is a foundation of shared values and genuine care beneath the rupture. These are signs that repair might actually be possible. There are also signs to watch out for if repair is unlikely or unhealthy. And they are: one, the betrayer minimizes, justifies, or blames. Two, the pattern repeats despite promises to change. Three, the betrayed person's sense of self has been fundamentally eroded. Fourth, the relationship dynamic was already unhealthy before the betrayal. And finally, the betrayed person cannot imagine trusting again. Just cannot imagine trusting the person again, no matter what. These are signs that repair is either unlikely or repair is unhealthy. Look, there is no shame. There is no shame in recognizing that some systems just cannot be rebuilt. Sometimes the most courageous act, the most courageous thing to do is acknowledging that the damage is way too deep. It's too deep, and choosing to honor yourself by walking away. That's perhaps the most right and courageous thing to do. Like we always do in all our episodes, let's just quickly walk through some real world cases to drive home these ideas and concepts. Let's begin with the romantic relationship, a case of financial betrayal. Aisha discovered that her husband had been hiding debt for well over 3 years. Not a small amount, enough to threaten their financial security and their children's education fund. Her husband's initial response: "I was going to tell you, I just didn't want you to worry. I was handling it." This is a regret, not remorse. He is sorry about the situation, not about the breach of trust. When he shifted to genuine remorse, I made a decision that should have been ours to make together. I hid it because I was ashamed, and in doing so, I took away your ability to trust what I tell you. I understand now why that's so bad and damaging, and I'm committed to full transparency going forward. Full transparency, starting right now, immediately. That's remorse. That shift from managing his shame to genuinely understanding her betrayal was the turning point in the relationship. Let's take the co parenting situation, the broken agreement case. After a very difficult divorce, James and his ex wife agreed that neither would introduce new partners to their children without mutual discussion first. James broke that agreement. He introduced his girlfriend to the children during a weekend visit without telling his former wife. His ex wife's trust in the co parenting system simply collapsed. She began monitoring every exchange, questioning every plan. The repair required James not to just apologize, but to demonstrate over several months that the co parenting agreement they had between each other was sacrosanct, was sacred. Every subsequent interaction had to be transparent. Every subsequent interaction had to be transparent and collaborative. Trust rebuilt slowly, and it required consistent action on his part. But that was the work that needed to be done. And finally, a workplace scenario. Let's talk about a confidentiality breach. A colleague shared a team member's personal health information with others in the office. The team member had confided in them during a rather difficult time. The colleague's apology sounded something like this: "Oh, I shouldn't have said anything. I'm sorry." Technically, an apology, but it did not acknowledge the depth of the violation, the trust that had been placed in them, the vulnerability that had been exploited, the professional and personal damage caused. None of these things were acknowledged. A genuine repair required not just words, but a demonstration that confidentiality would be honored going forward, and a willingness to sit with the discomfort of the colleague's justified anger for as long as it lasted. That was another case, a real world case of a confidentiality breach and what happens when trust is broken. So, how do you actually navigate the repair process after betrayal? Here's a framework for both parties. If you are the person who betrayed trust, then here are some things for you to try on. Number one, stop making excuses immediately. Just don't make excuses. Whatever your reasons were, stress, shame, fear, poor judgment, whatever, they don't matter right now. Is irrelevant. The other person doesn't need to understand why you broke the trust. They need to know that you understand the harm done. That's the first point. Second, move from regret to remorse. Ask yourself, am I sorry about the consequences or am I sorry about what I did to this person's sense of safety? Ask yourself that question. If it's the former, then you need to do the internal work to shift to the latter. Read, reflect, seek therapy if you must, because the other person will feel the difference even if you can't articulate it. Certainly will feel the difference. Number three, offer transparency without being asked. Offer transparency without being asked. Don't wait to be questioned. Proactively share information that demonstrates your commitment to honesty. This isn't about proving yourself, it's about rebuilding the system's information flow. Number four, be patient. Genuinely be patient. The other person's healing will not happen on your timeline. Let me underline that for you again. The other person's healing doesn't happen on your timeline. They may need reassurance you've already given a dozen times. They may have bad days where the anger might resurface. This is not punishment, it's the process of healing, and it requires your patience, not grudging. Performative patience, nor grudging, but genuine understanding that what you did takes time to recover from. You need to understand that. So, the recovery of the other person, the healing of the other person is not going to happen on your timeline, and nor must it, and nor can you enforce that. Number five, do the internal work. Why did you betray trust in the first place? What were you avoiding? What were you afraid of? What needs were you trying to meet through dishonesty? Ask yourself these questions. Understanding this isn't just self indulgent therapy speak, it's essential for genuine change to actually take place from within you. If you don't understand why you did it, you can't prevent it from happening again. It's as simple as that. So, do the internal work. So, these are things that you can do if you are the person who betrayed another person's trust. Now, if you are the person who was betrayed, by someone, then here are a few things for you. Number one, allow yourself to feel whatever, feel everything: anger, grief, betrayal, humiliation, all of it's valid. Don't rush yourself through it to get back to normalcy. So allow yourself to feel whatever comes. Number two, get clear on what you need, not what you want from them, what you need to feel safe again. Transparency, space, time, a specific conversation, name it. What is it that you need? Number three, distinguish between hypervigilance and genuine red flags. What I mean is, your nervous system will be on high alert for a very long time. Some of what you're sensing will be real cause for concern. At the same time, some will be anxiety creating threats where none actually exists. A therapist or another trusted person outside the relationship can help you, can help you with this reality testing. So that's point number three. Point number four, make a conscious choice, not an emotional one. At some point, you'll need to decide whether to stay and rebuild or to leave. That decision should be informed by the other person's actions, not just their words, and by an honest assessment of whether you can genuinely envision trusting again. There is no wrong answer here. Let me add, there is no wrong answer. Both staying and leaving can be courageous, healthy choices. Let me repeat, both staying as well as leaving can be both courageous as well as healthy choices, but it depends. Number five, if you choose to rebuild, do so consciously. Rebuild trust in increments. Allow small moments of vulnerability. Notice when those moments are met with honesty and care. Let trust grow organically, not because you've decided to forgive one fine day, but because the evidence over time supports it. And now, as far as both parties are concerned, get some professional support. Rebuilding trust after betrayal is, look, a genuinely difficult, complicated work. It really is. It's one of the situations, one of those situations where professional support isn't perhaps optional. It's highly and strongly recommended. A skilled therapist can help both of you, both parties, navigate the complex emotions involved, assess whether repair is viable, and create a structured process for rebuilding that broken trust. This isn't a sign of weakness. Seeking help is not a sign of weakness. It's a recognition that some ruptures are too significant to be tackled alone. So, seek professional help. So, here's what I really want you to take away from this episode as we come to a close. Trust isn't rebuilt with time, it's rebuilt with specific, consistent actions from both parties, the betrayed and the betrayer. The betrayer must move from regret, sorry about the situation, to remorse, sorry about the harm. They must offer transparency, demonstrate genuine change, and be patient with the other person's healing. The betrayed person must allow themselves to grieve, communicate what they need, and eventually make a conscious choice about whether to rebuild based on evidence, not just hope. Hope is a great thing, but here we need evidence. From a systems perspective, betrayal ruptures the entire relational foundation. Repair isn't about fixing one small thing, it's really about rebuilding the system on a far more honest ground. And that requires both people to change their roles within the system. Sometimes the system can be rebuilt and it emerges stronger for having survived the rupture. Sometimes it can't. And recognizing that takes courage too. Okay, so that was this week's episode, all about betrayal and how do you rebuild once trust is broken. In the next episode, we are looking at something closely related but psychologically distinct, and that is forgiveness. Specifically, why forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation, why you're not obligated to forgive, and why sometimes the healthiest act, the healthiest choice is to release someone without ever letting them back in. But that's next week. Coming back, if you've navigated betrayal in your life, either side of it, I'd welcome your thoughts in the comments below. What actually happened? What did not happen? So, thank you for watching this week's episode, and I will see you again in the episode next week. Just before I leave you, I just want to remind you that we have now got our own podcast show called the Huddle Institute podcast show, and every episode, new episode launches is out every Tuesday. So there will be one dropping every Tuesday. So make sure you give it a listen, and if it is something of interest to you, then do like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, and do support it as much as you can. Coming back to our YouTube channel, this is it for this week's episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao for now.